It was 2014. I was 19 years old and working as a nanny for one of the most respected families in the neighborhood, the Falstons. What was supposed to be just another night at work turned into an experience that would forever change our lives and teach us that sometimes the most unlikely heroes emerge in the darkest of times. If you think you've heard every scary story possible about Halloween, sit down. This one is different. This is real. And it began on a cold October night when dry leaves danced across the sidewalk and illuminated pumpkins smiled, unaware that they were about to witness a terror that no fantasy story could surpass. It was Halloween night, and I was excited to babysit the Falstons' kids. Their house was a dream, modern, technological, with cameras everywhere, very different from my old noisy house. The kids were adorable. Bentley, 6 years old, quiet and observant, and Madison, 4 years old, a little chatterbox full of energy. When the Falstons offered me double the amount to work that night, I accepted immediately. The children dressed up, he as Iron Man, she as a pink unicorn, and we went out to ask for sweets. That's when I noticed that man. Standing there, no costume, just an old jacket and jeans, watching insistently. No kids around, just watching. We went home and settled down to watch a movie and hand out candy. Suddenly, there was a loud knock on the door. It was him again, sweaty, staring, muttering something incomprehensible before disappearing. Later, there were other knocks, this time at the back of the house. I called Mrs. Falston, worried, but she tried to calm me down. The decisive moment was when Mr. Moore, a neighbor, commented that he had seen Mr. Falston in the office. Impossible, as the couple was at a party. We heard footsteps upstairs. Mr. Moore went upstairs to check and, after sounds of fighting, shouted for us to evacuate the house. Police found the man hiding in the master bedroom closet, holding Mrs. Falston. Everything happened very quickly after that. Police sirens lit up the entire street with their red and blue flashes. I was hugging Bentley and Madison tightly, trying to protect them from that scary scene, while Mr. Moore held the intruder immobilized until officers arrived. The man, as we later discovered, was a stalker obsessed with Mrs. Falston. For weeks, he had been sneaking into the house when no one was there, using Halloween as an excuse to take a closer look. Security cameras revealed that he had been there other times, always when the house was empty. The Falstons arrived within minutes of my second call, pale and scared. Mrs. Falston broke down when she learned that he had been in her room, going through her things. Mr. Falston could barely contain his anger. That night changed a lot of things. The Falstons installed an even more sophisticated security system with alarms at every entrance. I continued to babysit the children, but now there was a new safety protocol. The innocence of that modern and sophisticated house had been tarnished, but little by little we overcame the trauma. It took Bentley and Madison a few weeks to get back to normal. The nights were the worst, with frequent nightmares. But with a lot of care and patience, that scary Halloween became just a distant memory, although I've never been able to look at that house the same way again. The most important thing is that no one got hurt, but that night taught me that true terror doesn't always come in costume. Sometimes he wears a simple old jacket and has eyes that cannot disguise his true intentions. Over the next few months, the entire family went to therapy. Mrs. Falston discovered that the man, identified as James Cooper, was a former employee of the company where she worked. He had been fired a year ago, but had developed an unhealthy obsession with her. The changes to the house went beyond security. The Falstons painted the walls, rearranged the furniture, and even changed the garden decorations. It was as if they wanted to erase any trace of that night. Madison began sleeping in her brother's room for a while, finding comfort in Bentley's presence. I also had my own battles to face. For weeks, I blamed myself for not noticing the signs sooner, for not calling the police the first time I saw this strange man. Mrs. Falston made a point of telling me several times that, on the contrary, my attention and quickness of action had prevented something worse. Mr. Moore became a constant presence in the family's life. After that night, he installed a direct communication system between the two houses and always took a look at the children when he passed by. The whole neighborhood became more united, more attentive. One night, about 3 months later, Madison asked me as I was putting her to sleep, "The bad man isn't coming back, is he?" I looked into those worried eyes and was able to honestly answer that, no, he wouldn't come back. James Cooper was convicted and was far from there. Today, looking back, I see how that experience, as scary as it was, taught us about the importance of trusting our instincts and how a united community can make a difference. The Falstons' house was once again that special place that I loved so much, but now with a greater awareness of safety and security. The following Halloween was different. The children still went out to ask for sweets, but with more adults accompanying them. And the house, although still decorated for the holiday, had extra lights in every dark corner. After all, some lessons should never be forgotten. A year after the incident, the Falstons decided to have a small overcoming celebration. It was an intimate gathering, just the family, me, Mr. Moore, and some nearby neighbors who helped us that night. It was a way of giving new meaning to that difficult moment. Bentley, now 7, had become even more observant. He developed a peculiar interest in security systems and often asked about the new cameras his father installed. Madison, in turn, channeled her fears into art. His drawings, once full of unicorns and rainbows, now often included superheroes protecting his family. Miss Falston changed companies and implemented stricter workplace safety policies. Her case became an example of how to deal with stalkers and helped others protect themselves in similar situations. She even started giving talks on the subject at personal safety events. As for me, I decided to study psychology. The experience showed me how traumatic events can affect an entire family and awakened in me a desire to help other people overcome their fears. I continued babysitting for the Falstons on the weekends, but now with a different perspective on protection and care. The neighborhood has also changed. A community surveillance group was created, and people got to know each other better. Children could no longer play in the street without supervision, but this ended up bringing families closer together. James Cooper even tried to get in touch through letters from prison, but they were all intercepted and used to extend his sentence. Mrs. Falston refused to read any of them, choosing to focus on healing rather than fear. That Halloween taught us that sometimes real monsters don't wear masks, but it also showed us that there are many more ordinary heroes among us than we realize. Like Mr. Moore often says, evil may appear once, but good is always watchful. 5 years have passed since that Halloween night. Bentley, now 11, became president of the school's technology club. Your most recent project? A safety app for babysitters inspired by that scary night. Madison, at age 9, continued with her art, but now her works are displayed in the school hallway, a series called Guardians of the Home. The Falstons' home underwent more changes. Mr. Falston turned the old office where James Cooper used to hide into a playroom for the children. It was his way of saying that he wouldn't let fear win. The once white walls now feature vibrant colors chosen by Madison. Miss Falston became a respected activist. His work with victims of stalking helped pass stricter laws on the subject. She never heard from James Cooper again after her last attempt at contact and would rather keep it that way. Mr. Moore, our hero of that night, has retired, but remains the informal guardian of the neighborhood. He installed a bench on his porch where he spends his afternoons watching the children play safely. People joke that he is the guardian angel of the street. As for me, I'm finishing my degree in psychology. My thesis? The impact of trauma on family environments and the importance of community support. The Falstons are my main case study, with their permission, of course. I still take care of the children occasionally, more out of love than necessity. Halloween is once again a special date for us, but in a different way. Now we have a community party in the Falstons' backyard, with all the neighbors. Children still dress up and ask for sweets, but there are always adults around, talking and keeping an eye on them. Experience has taught us that true security is not just in cameras and alarms, but in the strength of the bonds we create. As Bentley said in his last school essay, sometimes bad things happen to show us how many good people there are around us. And so we continue, no longer dominated by fear, but strengthened by the union that terrible night brought us. After all, sometimes you have to go through the dark to appreciate the light even more. 10 years after that frightening night, the Falstons' story has become more than a memory. it has become a symbol of resistance and transformation. Bentley, now a 16-year-old, is about to start college for digital security engineering. Your babysitting app has already helped dozens of families and continues to evolve. Madison, at 14, turned her Guardians of the Home series into a social project that uses art to help children overcome their trauma. Miss Falston founded an NGO dedicated to helping victims of stalking, offering legal and psychological support. Mr. Falston, in turn, developed a residential security program that was adopted by several condominiums in the region. Together, they turned a traumatic experience into something that benefits others. Mr. Moore, although he is no longer with us, left an important legacy. The bench on his porch has been preserved and turned into a memorial with a plaque that reads, "Here sat a man who taught us that courage and kindness go together." I graduated in psychology and opened my own clinic, specializing in family trauma. The Falstons were my first supporters, and our shared story inspires many of my patients to believe that it is possible to overcome their fears. That house, which was once invaded by fear, is now a symbol of hope. The security cameras are still there, but they are no longer the focus. The focus is on the laughter of children playing in the garden, on the community parties that take place regularly, and on the strength of the bonds we build. James Cooper served his sentence and was never seen again. His name, which once gave us goosebumps, is now just a footnote in a much bigger story. A story about how love, courage, and unity can turn even the darkest nights into life lessons. Every Halloween, when the neighborhood kids go out in costume to ask for candy, there's a different feeling in the air. It's not fear, but gratitude. Gratitude that we have each other, that we turned a traumatic experience into something positive, and that we know that, no matter what happens, we are stronger together. As the Falston family's new motto, engraved discreetly above the front door, says, "Out of darkness came light, out of fear came strength, and out of danger came an even greater family." And so our story ends, not with an ordinary happy ending, but with a legacy of transformation that continues to inspire new generations to face their fears and believe in the power of unity. Until next time.